right, happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Carly Padilla, and I am the Education Specialist for Project Wildlife. And so you know what that means. It's the first Friday of the month. And today we are talking all about woodpeckers, especially acorn woodpeckers, who you see right here in front of you. This handsome little devil, his name is Arnold, and he is one of our new education ambassadors. So Arnie here came to Project Wildlife in 2017, and during June, the summer months, he was found riding on golfers' shoulders. So he would like to take a little ride as they were going in the golf cart. So if anyone knows about golfing and knows about Arnold Palmer, that is this namesake right here. So that's how Arnie got his name. We did attempt to wild him up, which does mean that we did put him in with other wild woodpeckers. But unfortunately, Arnie here just didn't catch on and always kind of stayed in a very young juvenile phase. And so unfortunately, that means that he could not be released back out to the wild. So we do have the proper permitting to house him. We have a wonderful caregiver, a volunteer named Linda King, who takes care of this handsome guy every single day. Makes a beautiful travel enclosure for him to keep him nice and busy. But he is one of our education ambassadors. Again, all the permitting that we have for this guy. So we do possibly believe that someone may have found him when he was very young. Could have just been a baby, could have just been hatched. It was always ideal to bring those very young animals into a licensed rehabilitator so situations like this don't happen. If he was brought in in a timely manner when he was found, he probably could have been successfully released back out to the wild. But because he was landing on the shoulders of golfing people or golfers, we do feel that he was a little, it's called imprinted. So too used to humans at that time, which makes him non-releasable. So a little quick background on acorn woodpeckers. We are very lucky because, as you see, they are not found all across the United States. They're very mostly focused to the West Coast, up through Oregon, all the way down to Central America and to Colombia. They are loving to have that habitat around those oak and pine tree, or pine oak, definitely in the woodland area. So they definitely need to have some trees around for them to want to take up habitat and residence in that area. So what sexually dimorphic means is that you can tell males and females apart from each other. So if you guys can look at the top of Arnold's head, oh, sorry about that, you will see that it goes black right by his beak to yellow, then to red. If this was a female, there would be a nice another little black spot between the yellow and the red area. So if you're able to use those binoculars when you're out and about in those foresty areas, you might be able to tell the difference between a male and a female acorn woodpecker. And then a little bit harder to tell is about that big beak size. The female's bills are about 10% shorter than the male's, but might be a little more difficult when you're out there in the wild trying to see whose beak is longer. So the coloration on the head is definitely the best way to go. Some really cool adaptations. Remember that big word? Adaptation means it helps them to survive in the wild. Zygodactylus. That is a super cool word. It just means they have 2 toes in front and 2 toes in back. So you can see how Arnold is hanging on to this piece of wood right here. This is what they would do out into the wild when they're hanging on the side of a tree. So those 2 toes in front and 2 toes in back really help them hang on tight, and so that they can do that pecking of that wood in a very fast and deliberate manner. They have pretty stiff tail feathers, which are nicely supported by long muscles, and again helps them move up and down those trees. They can kind of use that tail feather to push them up or help kind of slow them down when they're coming down. But one of the coolest things is that tongue that they have. Miss Lauren will show you this little visual down here. They have such long tongues to help them get into those little crevices to get the insects and the sap, that the tongue actually go around the skull, around the eye orbit. So you can imagine how long that tongue can extend to help them get all that good stuff that's inside those tree barks. So don't know if any of you knew that beforehand. I know I didn't know that before I met our woodpeckers here. They do have a third eyelid like some other birds do, which really just covers up that eye and will help protect those eyes when they are pecking super hard. But one thing that's super cool, so I don't suggest anyone do this, But imagine if you went up to a wall and hit your head against the wall numerous times in 1 minute. You're probably not going to feel very well after that minute is done. So how in the world do woodpeckers peck the wood so fast, so hard, that they don't have a concussion? Well, it's because they have like a cushion-like substance around that skull. So when they're hitting that wood, their brain isn't getting sloshed around. It will actually stay in one place. We as humans use something very similar to that to help protect our brain, especially when we're riding bikes or we're on rollerblades. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? The helmets. So when you put that helmet on, you have that cushion-like substance touching your head so that if you do fall, you're not going to hurt your head when you hit the ground. Guess where scientists got that idea from? The woodpecker. So super cool, my friends. And guys, just so you see 2 eyes, a nose, and a little smile. This artwork was done by Arnold himself by pecking in those exact spots just like that. And guys, this is not thin wood right here, so he has a lot of fun. So we always have to provide them with enrichment that he would get out in the wild. But he's known as our happy face woodpecker. Now they do have quite a few different sounds, which we are going to share a few of them with you. So this first one that we're going to share is a greeting call. So you'll hear the waka 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 come on. So my friends, that is the telltale sign. So when you're out hiking or even just outside, I know in Poway a lot of the times, I hear that call and I know that there's acorn woodpeckers around. The next call you're going to hear is a defense call. I can't really do it as well as they do. So that's the call you're going to hear. So that's the call they're going to sound off to their fellow family members and to their big groups that they live in to let them know that something scary might be by, like a hawk or a falcon, even crows from time to time. And then another one that they're going to let their friends know that danger is by is the warning call. So these last two calls, those are going to be warning calls, defense calls, just so that everyone knows that they need to look around, be a little more alert on what's going on around them. Now, acorn woodpeckers are cavity nesters, so that means that they do like to nest in trees, and they're usually going to do it where they store all their food. So a tree that has all those holes in it where they put those acorns, that's called a granary. Granary. And so you'll see that. So that's what they're doing all day long usually. And those acorns can actually dry up. So what they sometimes do is they'll make a new hole because the acorn got smaller and they want to make sure that acorn fits right into that hole. So those pesky squirrels and those other animals don't come and steal their acorns that they have been working so hard for. And then what's called cooperative breeding, which means there's usually a one male, and he may have 2 to 3 females with him. And then the kids that are born the year before will help raise the kids that are born this year. So everyone takes part in raising the children and making sure they can be as successful as possible. Now, nesting is usually happening between April and June. So my friends, this is a big reason why we say don't trim those trees during the springtime, is because we have a ton of birds making their nests and laying their eggs in those nests. So you can see how tiny these little eggs are. Look at that's my pinky finger. They're not very big at all. So they can easily be trimmed out of a nest without you even knowing that they're there. They can usually have anywhere between 4 to 6 eggs at a time, and they're going to lay 1 egg and then probably 24 hours the next egg, 24 hours the egg after that. So there's always probably usually a bigger kid and there's always usually a littler kid. But again, they're kind of helping each other out. And when they are born, they are blind and naked. And so they definitely need all the help from all those members of the family to help them get to that adulthood to be successful. Fledging means when they're learning how to fly. So about 30 to 32 days after they're hatched, they're ready to start exploring the world and start building up those flight muscles and getting out. So they can definitely be more successful with the more family members that they have watching after them. Males are usually mature at about a little over 2 years, so 2.1 years. And then females mature a little under 2 years, so 1.9 years for those females. Oldest male on record has gotten to be 16 years old. Oldest female on record was about 15 years old. Out in the diet, if they're called acorn woodpeckers, you would think that acorns are part of their diet, which is true. But only about 50% of their diet is acorns, which they do store in those trees and those granaries. Oh, look at them go, having some fun, pecking that wood. The rest of the diet is made out of fruit, sap, flower, nectar, seeds, insects. They love ants. They love termites as well. And from that picture that you see at the bottom right there, it's not uncommon for them to frequent the nearby hummingbird feeder as well from time to time. These guys are adorable. But Arnold's diet here does try to mimic as much as possible of what he would get out in the wild. So he does get peanuts and cashews, the various variety of fruits and veggies, scrambled eggs, some cat food, and then he does love those mealworms, waxworms, and crickets. If anyone wants to donate any of those, we can absolutely just go to our wish list and you can help feed our acorn woodpecker who is throwing things at me over here. Now, their conservation status, they are on the least concern side, so we're not afraid of losing them anytime soon yet. But all animals, like we know, my friends, they all need our helps. They all need our help. So one of the things that they are facing is habitat degradation, habitat destruction. So we want to make sure that we're helping them versus depleting their habitat. So they're becoming more fragmented, which we're definitely seeing populations decline due to that fragmentation. So the regeneration of oaks in California from the wildfires and just from our overgrazing is really having effect on the populations of our woodpeckers. So we want to make sure that we're planting trees more than that we're cutting them down. A few other common woodpecker residents that we do have here in San Diego is the Nuttall's woodpecker. So these guys are definitely more well adapted to living in that urban environment, and one that we don't tend to see very often unless you're kind of more up in the country areas like Ramona or Julian. Out in Alpine, you'll see the northern flicker out there who definitely loves to be in those more woodland type areas where there's more conifers, oaks, and sycamore trees. But these are a few of the very common ones that we see here, and they do come through Project Wildlife from time to time, and then go to our volunteer here, Miss Linda King, to get rehabilitated and then released back out. If you want to go find an acorn woodpecker around, there's a ton of places you have to look. Palomar Mountain, Cuyamaca, Mount Laguna, San Onofre, Los Penasquitos, San Clemente, Tecolote, Blue Sky. Pretty much all over for the most part. Again, listen for that noise. That's going to be your telltale sign that you have some woodpeckers. And obviously, if you hear that strumming as well, as these guys so like to do very often. Just a few fun facts that we have for acorn woodpeckers. If anyone, I think he's getting a little bit of a revitalization, but Woody the Woodpecker, the cartoonist Walter Lantz actually based Woody the Woodpecker off of acorn woodpeckers because they were so amused by the woodpecker when they were on a honeymoon. And so that was the development. That's where Mr. Woody the Woodpecker came from. One of the largest granaries on record is up to 50,000 acorns in one tree up in the San Jacinto Mountains. So if you ever want to take a look at that, it's where they go crazy and they just start making all the holes for all their food. So like I said, those acorns up, so they're make another hole to put that acorn into that one, then make another hole for those other acorns that are drying out, again, to make sure that those other animals don't steal them from them. One of the coolest things that is ever on record is that woodpeckers can peck up to 22 times per second. That's not even a minute, per second. That is how amazingly strong that beak is. And my friends, these animals, these birds are no slouch. I always call them the busy birds because they're always going around pecking at those different types of trees, making those granaries, and going to town. Now, if anyone has a woodpecker who may like to wake you up by pecking on the side of your house, it's not because they think your house is a tree. trying to let the other woodpeckers know that this is my territory, and you need to know that there is a current woodpecker that lives here. Now, a few things that we would love you to walk away with is that if anyone would love to have a picture, we're going to go ahead and put a link to a picture up on this Facebook post. You can print it out and color it whatever color you would like, but if you want to mimic what some local woodpeckers would be here, take a look and just go ahead and remember that yellow, black, and red type of head. And then we're also going to put another fun activity to where you can make a woodpecker. Again, you're going to print out the picture, you're going to color it. You'll use a little piece of a straw and then a rubber band. You cut that rubber band just one time, you put it through that little hole with the straw, and then you touch that woodpecker and he'll go down that rubber band pecking away at his little area. So we'll put that link into this Facebook post as well. But without further ado, my friends, I hope you learned a little bit about woodpeckers. One thing that I wanted to mention is the color red. Although they do have red on their bodies, it is a danger sign, like for most animals. So red-tailed hawks, red-shoulder hawks, anytime those animals will see them, what they will actually do is raise those head feathers up top and make that really alarm call sound. So again, other friends around know that there is danger around. But if you're going out birding, don't wear the color red. Not a good color for birds out there. Miss Lauren, do we have any questions that have come through about our woodpecker friend?
We didn't have any questions, but Laura says that woodpeckers peck at her telephone pole.
It will happen too. Definitely think that could be a tree as well from time to time. But these guys, I know, like I said, they're all over the place. We absolutely love Mr. Arnold here. But again, like we mentioned, a few things before we go. Don't trim the tree during the spring and summer months. If you need to trim, this is the time to do it right now in the month of November. When we get into December, we're getting a little bit closer to when hummingbirds and barn owls are going to start nesting. So if you need to do any trimming or pruning of the trees or those bushes, do it right now. If you guys ever find a sick, injured, or orphaned wild animal here in San Diego, Project Wildlife is here for you. We are the place to bring that animal to, so that we can get them rehabilitated and released back out. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about our woodpecker friends here in San Diego. Again, Mr. Arnold and his very fabulous setup keeps him very busy, and this is just the travel enclosure, my friends. This is not what he lives in every single day. He does have a much bigger enclosure with a lot more fun things to do as well. A lot of this enclosure setup that you see does go into a much bigger area where he lives. But he's a wonderful ambassador, still getting to learn the ropes from a little bit, but we're so happy that we do have him. But if he could have been released back out to the wild, that's ultimately the goal that we want for this guy. So if you ever find those sick, injured, or orphaned wild animals, get them to that licensed rehabilitator as soon as you possibly can. Tune in next Friday. It's going to be another one of our lovely, what are we doing? What are these? Our Humane at Home Fridays. So 4 p.m. next Friday. Check us out. But thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm with this cooler weather coming into San Diego. And we'll see you next week.